Welcome back to Hospice Talk with RC Hospice. My name is Esther Narcissian. I am the Director of Operations.
I'm Kelsey Murchison, RN, Admissions and Case Manager.
I'm Tom Rupp, and I'm the chaplain.
And I'm DJ Foster, RN Case Manager.
Today's episode, we're going to be talking about actual experiences of imminence and transition of patients. I feel like it's important for people to know what to expect, what we see, and some supportive guidance we'll give to those who are next to their loved ones when this is happening. So anybody would like to start with some examples?
So, well, I guess we could talk about what it means.
Sure.
So, basic in actively dying. So if there's a difference, so there's like that transition phase where there's been a difference in the way that they're breathing, the way that they're eating, whether they're responsive or non-responsive, whether they open their eyes, all those kinds of things. That has now changed from what they used to be. So that's kind of when they enter that phase, and that phase can last anywhere from days, hours, minutes.
What's that phase called?
It's
transitioning.
Yeah. Transitioning. And then when they're active, so when they're actively passing, the breaths they'll be like gaps in between. So they'll breathe, it'll be like 10, 15 seconds, then they'll breathe again, and then what else happens?
And this period can be short, very rapid onset, or it could be prolonged over the course of several days or even weeks, showing a slow decline. Or I had a patient a while back who was still walking around. He needed a little bit of oxygen, but he was walking on his own, going to the bathroom himself, and able to say what he needed, swallowing okay. To that afternoon, he was completely bedbound and needed increased supplemental oxygen, and so that was more of a...
Was he responsive still?
He wasn't.
In an afternoon.
Yeah, in just a matter of hours, just laid down, took a nap, and then never got out of bed again.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes these things can be very rapid.
I've had some, of course, we all had many experiences, at least one or two come to mind. I'll give you the brief one first. I remember being, again, at a bedside with the family there and the patient, and her breathing was very slow, and I guess labored is the word, but it got to the point where I was timing, and it was 20 to 30 seconds between breaths.
And you knew.
And I knew, so it was like, and I was waiting, and we were all timing, and they asked me the question, and I did not know the answer. I said, but she can't go on like this much longer. I did say that, and she did pass that night. But the other patient, if I can tell this story, was I had arrived, and they had called around. They had called the nurse, and I believe me, and I don't know who else. And I got there before the nurse, and this patient, she was definitely actively dying. It sounded like it. You could see it, and all this. Or she hadn't eaten or drank anything for 4 or 5 days, and her breathing, and she had that sound,
the
rattling. That was happening, and they asked me. The family asked me, well, how long do you think she'll be? And of course, I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question in good faith. But I was thinking of what I'd heard the nurses say and what I've seen around, and so I said, well, and I asked the various questions, and based on all these things, I would say, in my unprofessional opinion, because they asked me and they pressed me, I said probably a few more hours, and it was during my visit. So that call was correct, but if I can say it this way, you could just tell.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't want to just make some prediction that will be false or off base.
There's definitely, there's the hands get colder. A lot of, if you look it up, you can see that the fingertips start getting bluer because the oxygen isn't circulating anymore. Their feet are cold. I mean, I know, me being Armenian, the number one thing that Armenians look for when a patient's passing, it's so funny. DJ actually has a joke. He says, what's the joke? Say it.
How do you know a person's Armenian?
You don't. They'll tell you. So there's some humor for you guys while we're talking about imminence. But they know that the number one way of telling the patient's close or their loved one is close is by the coldness of their hands and their feet. And my own experiences with our dad when he was passing is it was in a matter of like he was eating a meal and then slowly he wasn't. The next day it was worse, and the next day it was worse. And oxygen, I realized, isn't so much, you're helping them breathe. It's actually giving them comfort, because it's still giving them that, I guess it's like peace to know that even though, I'm passing, I'm getting every possible support. I don't have labored breathing. The breaths that are 30 to 40 seconds apart isn't labored as much as it is just his body is declining.
So with that and like the rattling, we do everything to treat those things.
Yeah.
So like with the rattling, it's a lot of times it's secretions and labored breathing
And
together.
you give something.
So we have something, we usually use like atropine drops, which helps to dry up all the secretions.
Or the scopolamine patch.
Yep.
Yeah.
The little patch, yeah. That
I've seen those.
that helps to basically dry up the secretions, so that way when it does come time to pass, they're comfortable.
Yeah.
They aren't suffering, because that's the last thing you want. You want them to be as comfortable as possible.
And one thing I've also seen is families don't understand that it's true they're passing, but they're still feeling everything up into the last moments. So it's so important to treat those symptoms. I mean, the patient we went to together, when we got there, I remember you did the assessment, and just off of his grimacing, his face, yes, he was imminent, and was right, it was within hours, but you could see the anxiety. And just treating his anxiety not only gave his facial expression just peace, like you can see that it shifted the atmosphere for the family, because they could see that he wasn't in pain or he wasn't having anxiety anymore. I mean, honestly, I tell people it's the most beautiful experience seeing a patient transition when they have every need met.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was something where I don't know if it was they waited so long to actually be admitted that by the time that we got there to do the admission, he was already imminent.
Yeah.
And so, we walked in, saw
handled
him,
it.
we treated all of his symptoms, and yes, it was nice that the family was able to get some relief from that as well.
Definitely.
Because we walked in, he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
People were crying because he looked so uncomfortable. I mean, there was nothing that they could do at that time.
Exactly.
And so we were able to come in, treat that. Everybody was able to come in, say their goodbyes, hold his hand.
And that was such a lovely family. I mean, I love those moments where they're surrounded by, I mean, my dad was even surrounded by, there was like 30 of us in the room where everyone's just like there. And I think it's so awesome because, I mean, my father was someone like amazing, where the doctor even asked him, he's like, are you scared? And don't get me wrong, it's not like my dad didn't have the anxiety medication. They gave that to him, and he's like, no. And I think it's so important I feel like because he was a man of faith, he had peace about it. But I think that's why having nurses or the chaplain being there during those situations, you give the patient peace to transition, to move on.
And there are times where the transition is longer.
Yeah.
So like I've had a patient who told me, no, I'm going to pass away soon. I'm like, no, what? Your vital signs are fine. Like,
and they do, don't they? Like, they call it.
And
they know.
Yeah. Sometimes they're able to tell you, they're like, no, I'm just done.
Yeah.
Okay. And then slowly but surely, the intake of food and fluids went down, and the respirations changed, and within like a week and a half, they passed. But sometimes they know when they're
gonna go.
Yep.
I think Tom might remember this. We had a patient where our social worker Lilith went, and he was a pastor. Lilith's like, I went in, I'm doing my assessment, I'm talking to him. He tells his daughters, like, call everybody. He's like, she's telling me, Esther, he looks fine. He's bedridden, but he's fine. He's talking, he's communicating, and he calls his family in there. He tells them 2 hours. I'm leaving in 2 hours. His kids all get there, and Lilith's still there. He passes in exactly 2 hours. And these are the miraculous things that I've actually seen happen. I mean, in the last, 7 years that I'm in hospice. And that's why for me it's so fascinating that a patient not only gives himself peace and knows what's going to happen, but affirms and comforts those around them. It's crazy because you're the one who's supposed to be comforting them, but the patient who's passing comforts.
I actually had that happen not too long ago.
Did you?
I went in. We had admitted him. I went for like his first case management visit, and he, was talking to me, and then he goes, "Hey," and so his daughter comes. He goes, "Go get your sister." And so she comes in. He's like, "You guys have to just let me go."
Wow.
And she's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You just gotta let me go. I'm done." And so it was really nice that the family was so supportive. They heard that, and instead of freaking out in front of him, they just said, "Okay, we love you, Dad. If that's what we support you 100%. You do what you need to do. We're here for you." And I think he passed 2 days later.
Wow.
But when we went outside, the family's like, "Okay, well, what does that mean?"
That was the panic sets in.
Yeah.
I love that you guys are there for them.
Yeah. So it was, I was able to just say, sometimes people know,
Yeah.
They're done. And
Isn't there something, I know that you guys have experienced, they call it the last hoorah, kind of like they get up, they're fine, you feel like everything's going to be okay, and then,
Sometimes.
yeah.
I've seen that before where they get just a real big burst of energy
Yeah.
and almost seem like
They're back.
Yeah, they're
They
back
bounce
to their
back
normal
almost.
selves, and that was their last little burst before finally declining and end up passing. But I have seen that, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that sometimes, and it's kind of like they'll talk to everybody so they can say, "Okay, I just want to tell you I love you," like, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, see, it's always sad to talk about, but there's such, like I said, I think hospice is beauty. They say 2 greatest miracles in life is to see the first breath and to see the last, and us seeing that miracle by, seeing our patients their last breath, or helping families understand that, it's normal, it's a way of life, and, it's not the end. I mean, I personally, as a believer, believe it's not the end. And I just feel like the support of having hospice there is so, so important.
And it's not for me, and I know I speak for the nurses and the HHAs. It's not a job. It actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking it's a privilege to be able to say, "Hey, I've invited him or her at this major crossroads of my life, this major event, the last breath, and here you are. You're a part of that." That's actually a privilege to be there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Definitely. We're honored.
Yes.
Any other stories you guys or experiences you guys
Oh,
remember?
we got all kinds of stories, but we don't have a whole lot of time. Esther was talking earlier about or maybe it was Nurse Kelsey, about the hesitation. We don't want you to hesitate.
Yes.
If you have questions or comments or something you'd like to share, or if you are interested in becoming a part of hospice, you can call us here at RC Hospice at 916-858-1440. Stay tuned, because there's lots more stories and lots more information, and we love to share it with you. Again, 916-858-1440. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.